How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Chair Talk. Guys, we're going to talk about personal limitations that you need to be aware of when you step into a leadership position. The question for this episode today is really, can you lead? And I want to take note of 5 personal limitations that you need to be aware of when you cross into a leadership position. The limitations actually come from John Maxwell. It's got a great book out there called The 5 Principles of Leadership. So if you guys ever get a chance, please check it out, because a lot of the dialogue we do on leadership is really based on Maxwell's books, including 5 Levels of Leadership, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. He's just a very good writer for leadership. Remember, these are principles or laws that have been applied in the business setting that we try to bring over into the correctional setting. I'm going to have a guest today. We're going to have Joe Pomponio. I'm looking forward to having him on so we can discuss these 5 personal limitations that we need to be aware of when we cross into a leadership position. But first, let me announce my sponsors. We have American Military University. If you guys are looking for a degree, seek higher level education, please check out American Military University. It's a great school, great online school, very supportive of what we do in corrections, very supportive of the channel here on Tier Talk on YouTube. Then we also have Guardian RFID, from inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence. Guardian RFID transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit guardianrfid.com for more information. And guys, if you get a chance, check out their YouTube channel as well. They have content that we put up. We also have Inmate Manipulation Decoded. Great book, guys. It's on the market. It was pretty cool. I'm going to show you guys a picture real quick. In Montana, they certified my course. So this is Claire, and these are the maintenance workers and some of the officers that recently just took the course. And you can see me in the background in the video. And then they have the book, and then there's a cert because the state of Montana certed the inmate manipulation course. There is a video of the whole course. If you guys are interested, just let me know. It's free. I'll just send you the link. So email me at gangianthony@yahoo.com. That's Gangi, Anthony, Anthony, @yahoo.com. And don't forget, guys, another book that's out there, Lessons Learned While Working in a Prison, My Journey from Officer to Administration. If you're going to look to take your correctional career up a notch, this is a great book to have. You can find that on Amazon as well. The link to that is also in the description. Oh, there he is. What's up, Joe? Trying to situate yourself there, huh? You're muted, Joe. You're muted. I'll unmute you, Joe. I'll mute you. I think I can. No, I can't, actually. Oh, yeah, I can. What's up, Joe?
Go. Nada, man. Just trying to find a spot where I got decent lighting here where I'm not hearing Dad in the background there.
I could see you.
Good. That's a good thing.
Hey, Joe, you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Absolutely. My name's Joe Pomponio. I'm a retired lieutenant with the Texas Department of Criminal Justice of over 29 years and current panel member with Anthony here on Tier Talk, man. Having a blast.
Always good to have you, Joe. It's going to be an interesting topic, Joe, because we're going to talk about personal limitations you need to be aware of when you cross into the leadership position. I kind of titled this, Can You Lead? Now, guys, granted, I just want to open up the dialogue by starting off that when you enter into a leadership position, the first thing you're doing is entering into the position, which kind of gives you the right to lead, gives you the opportunity to lead, but you don't want to be a positional leader. You don't want to lead by position. You don't want to, remind people that you're a supervisor and they have to do what they tell you to do, or you have to do what I tell you to do. You don't want to be a positional leader. Eventually, those rights wear off. And then it becomes more about your relationship with the people that you supervise in your effort to be productive. So mind you, guys, you get the position. It offers you the opportunity to lead, which gives you certain rights. But remember, if you lead by position, you'll never get people to go above and beyond in the work that you need them to do. So having said that, you go from position to building relationships towards people, with people. So you guys grow towards each other and with each other. And then eventually the relationship that you are growing eventually leads towards being productive in hopefully doing what's expected of you for the agency. And there's also 2 other levels related to that, which we're not really going to go into much today. But the 2 other levels are really just once you prove that you're able to do something and be effective, people start to respect you more. Then you start building them into leaders. And then eventually they start building leaders themselves. So that's great. That's like the pinnacle of anyone's career. But the first thing you want to ask yourself when you cross into that leadership position, do you have the ability to lead? Now, guys, there's so many different qualities when it comes to being a good leader. So we're not going to be able to cover every ability or quality needed to lead. We're just going to cover maybe a few important ones that I want you to be aware of that I don't think people really think of as much. So I'll start with one right now. For me, the most important thing as a leader is your willingness to grow. Because again, this is not about a destination. It's all a journey. And we're always on a journey. And the journey is where you grow. In today's world, guys, we're so quick to want answers. We Google something, we get an answer. And the problem is we forget it soon after because we really haven't gone through the journey of discovering that answer. So I think in today's world, guys, we're losing out on the importance of the journey, which is what connects you to what it is that you need to learn. So your ability to grow as a leader is very important because when you're brought into a leadership position, you may be brought in because you have certain skills. I get it, but you're really brought in because you have potential to grow. That's the key. And the moment you believe you're the smartest person in the room, the moment you stop listening, the moment that you stop wanting to grow because you think you've reached that destination is the moment you put a lid, not just on yourself, but on the people that are beneath you. So for me, if you want to grow your team and you want to be productive, you yourself have to be willing to grow. That for me is one ability that you cannot overlook as a leader. What's one for you, Joe, that's important?
Man, for me, honestly, it's actually a couple of them. Lead by example. And, for me, one of my biggest pet peeves and the one things I always tried to be was I tried to be very transparent and also let my people know that I'm fallible. You never want to step into a job as a positional leader and put yourself out there as invincible. You want your people to know that, you're fallible just like everybody else because you're human. Leading by example to me was more important than anything. What you have on your collar doesn't mean anything unless, you got the leadership qualities and skills to go with it. Anybody can step into that role, but, regardless, the big question is, are you ready to take on the responsibilities outside the normal course of stepping up to that position? Leadership means everything.
I love when you said vulnerability because, guys, believe it or not, part of wanting to grow is knowing that you're not perfect. And I think if you express vulnerability, it's okay to do that because it shows authenticity. So, I mean, guys, don't forget, we're always striving to be perfect. I get it. But you always have to have that mindset of being authentic. Your people, if you lie about being vulnerable, if you believe that you are the smartest all the time and you can't learn because you know everything as it is, the problem is if you're not authentic, people that work for you, they're not going to trust you. And we'll get to that later on. But actually, it's the next thing, actually. Can you be trusted? Guys, as we speak through this, I want you to know something. There's a lot of abilities that we want as a leader. We can go over that all day. You want leaders that, like he said, models good behaviors, professional, that shows you what needs to be done as opposed to talking the talk, but never walking the walk. But I think two abilities that people kind of just overlook is your ability to grow. And like Joe said, your ability to be authentic. And authentic does lead to, like we just said, being trusted. The more authentic you are, the more people can trust you. And having said that, that's why it's good to show your people you're not perfect. So then they know it's okay for them not to be perfect. The last thing we want is a system where people don't trust you enough that when they make a mistakes, they're not willing to tell you. They'd rather hide them. And in corrections, we don't want that. And that also comes with, can I trust you if I do make a mistake? Guys, we have to cultivate an environment of growth, correct? So we want people to take initiative, to be innovative, but they're never going to be able to do that if they feel that the moment they take a risk, the moment they step out of their comfort zone, you yourself, because maybe you're insecure or whatever it is going to quickly jump on them if they make a mistake in an effort to cover your own ass. And then you get a culture where they just hide mistakes as opposed to trusting you enough to tell you, yo, I made a mistake. How can we be constructive? How can I learn? Because as management or as a leader, you need to know the difference between negligence and developmental errors. negligent mistakes, which I won't even say it's a mistake, just negligence, and developmental errors. That's why people also got to realize when someone does something wrong and they're outright foolish, they're negligent, or they broke the law, that's not a mistake. Don't minimize it by using the word mistake, because then the problem is you're going to equate that type of mistake to a developmental error. And now the problem is you're treating people the same where you shouldn't. The person that made a developmental error, who took the initiative, who's trying to be innovative, you got to cultivate that. You got to help that person grow, be constructive. The other person who was negligent, who didn't care, or maybe did something criminal, that's not a mistake. They got to be disciplined. They got to be held accountable and responsible for their actions. So for me, can you be trusted? I love what Joe said about the authenticity, but Joe, as a leader, how important it is for your people to trust you, especially in this profession, corrections.
Oh, it's very important. Trust is everything between a leader and the subordinates, and subordinates that look up to their leaders. The one thing, I always, one of my mottos was once a CO, always a CO. And I meant that truly, because, I wanted my subordinates to know that I automatically had the trust in them until they gave me a reason not to trust them. And secondly, I told them, up front, every time I took over a new shift, or a new team, is, I will never ask you to do something that I wouldn't do myself. Meaning that I'll never intentionally put you in harm's way or put you in a position where you're going to have to fade heat, because leaders don't do that. So, trust between, trust is a two-way street. It's got to go both ways, and it's integral in order to have a good running shift. They got to know you have their back, and as a leader, you got to know they have your back, so, when it works hand in hand, man, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and guys, I want to mention something too. In corrections, we can't be paranoid because we can't be hesitant. And sometimes I would like to believe that our agency does their best. Hopefully, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. So I know that the people next to me can be trusted, because I want to mention this to the agencies out there who are hiring and maybe so desperate for numbers that they're hiring by quantity over quality. Guys, I want you to know something. When I'm in the field, when I'm on the floor, the person next to me, they're going to have my trust automatically, because I can't waste energy being paranoid and distrusting everybody. I think as you start to move up, it's more of trust is automatic, distrust is earned. Because again, and guys, think about this. As you start to move up and you get bigger areas of control, if you're going into those positions not trusting anyone, you're going to be micromanaging the shit and spread out so thin, you just can't. So for me, I usually tell people, guys, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt because I have to, but don't lose it. Because once you lose it once, it's gone. So distrust is earned. Trust at some point is going to be automatic, but I'm saying that for a reason. If you're the agency and you're hiring people quantity over quality, know for a fact we're put in a position where we have to trust that individual. That person's next to me. I expect them to, save my life one day if need be. I expect them to do what's right, what's professional, what's expected of them, what I expect from them. And again, if you're putting them through the system, you need to know that expectation that I have, I'm assuming you filtered all that. So when they come to me, I'm giving them my trust automatic, because I can't work paranoid. I can't be hesitant. I'm going to have to assume that, hey, a code happens. I know this guy's got my back, until they don't. So guys, do your best at that initial filter process to make sure that the person you're bringing through meets those levels of expectation, because when I'm next to that person on that floor, I expect certain things. And when that person doesn't commit to those certain things, I'm pissed at the person. I'm going to hold them accountable, but I'm going to look at the agency and the people that passed them through. The hell were you thinking when you brought me this guy or this female? What were you thinking? Because I have to trust the individual. I have to. If I don't, and think about it. If we questioned everyone that worked next to us all day, we would never be willing to move forward. We'd be so afraid. So distrust to me is earned in this profession. So again, that puts a lot of weight on the agencies that filter people through. So trust is a big thing. As a leader, I know it may take a while when you're put in that position. I get that. when you look up, maybe there is some level of trust that has to be earned. But in the end, the funny thing is that we also on our front line figure, you know what, this guy's a supervisor. Let's give them a chance because I can't question every directive they give me. So let's go ahead and give them a chance. So again, even for supervisors, some people may give you that level of trust right off the bat until you burn them. And at that point there, as a supervisor, it's very hard to get that back. You're going to, trust and believe, guys. Once you lose the trust of the people that you supervise, it's very hard to get that back, depending on how the trust was lost. But again, trust is very important. If your people can't trust you, they're not going to follow you. Let's just say it that way. If people don't trust you, wherever you're trying to take them, they're not going to go. And this is where Joe mentioned before. That's where positional leadership it starts to become not as powerful, because again, maybe at first you get it because you jump into the position. Okay, this guy's my boss. I got to follow him and see what he's about. So he's got the rights automatically of that. But eventually, that's going to wear thin. Eventually, that position, the rights behind that position all wear thin. I start to see Joe as Joe. And now why ain't I going above and beyond is because Joe is totally positional. I don't really trust him. So I'm only going to do what's expected of me. But I'm going to start, Joe's telling me to go this way. I don't know. I don't trust Joe. And then Joe failed. Joe, part of that trust, guys, is that second level, building relationships with your people. So again, eventually you go from position to building relationships. If you're not making an effort to build relationships with your people to be productive, you're not building the trust, because without relationships with your people won't think that you care for them. They won't think that you value them. And if they don't see that you care and value them, they don't follow you. And I will say one thing, and I think Joe would agree. If you go to lead people, you have to care for them. You can't lead people if you don't care for them or if you don't have value for them. And the good thing about that, if you showcase care through your actions, not your words, but through your actions, if you showcase that the people have value, again, actions, not words, they will trust you enough to follow you. And in corrections, that trust matters, because in corrections, the choices that a leader has to make and what the followers may have to do could be life and death. What's your thoughts on all that, Joe, before we move to the next one with that trust and care and value?
Yeah. I mean, you have to build relationships with your employees. You have to. It's a must. If you don't show them that you care, their whole aspect is why am I even trying? He doesn't give a shit about us. Having a little insight to each one of your employees and showing them that you care. Man, that just a little piece of knowledge, man, makes the difference in their job performance. It builds trust because they know that you care enough to find out those little individual details about them, what's going on with them. You can't just go into a position and not give a shit about your people, because you're not going to get any kind of effectiveness out of them. You're not going to get any loyalty from them. And, when stuff hits the fan, then your supervision is questioned in their eyes. So, it never hurts to show your employees that you care. You're not going to lose anything by showing that. You're going to gain a hell of a lot more than you're losing emotionally. I promise you.
And Joe, I think we'll agree with this, guys. When you show that you care and when you show that you value your people, the good thing about that is they'll go above and beyond for you, because people really don't work for the agency. They work for their leaders. At the end of the day, guys, when you find that people leave an agency, they're mostly leaving it because of the bosses. It has nothing to do with the job. It's more about the bosses. So having said that, if you show that you're effective as a leader, you show that you care and you have value, they're willing to go above and beyond. But if you want to play position, then they'll play their position. I want to be positional. I'm going to throw my rank out all day and make sure that you respect my position. Okay, that's fine. But wait till you ask me to do something outside my position now, because I'm going to play my position. And trust and believe, they're going to win that. You know what I mean? Because we're always going to need. Yeah. So now this is a good one, Joe. This is about your level of commitment or sacrifice. I'll start briefly and I'll give it to you, because I want to just mention something to see if we can kind of engage the dialogue. But when it comes to moving up, there are sacrifices and commitments that are made. We've discussed that on prior shows. We did a whole show on sacrifices made when you're moving up. A big part of that could be time with your family. We get it. But you're also sacrificing freedom for responsibility, by the way. Don't forget about that, because now you're more responsible for the people that are in your charge. You're responsible for their actions. But the commitment too. When you become a leader, you have to be committed not just to the people that you lead, but also where they're headed. If there's a vision for the agency and you're trusted to lead them there, you have to be committed to that, because if you're not committed, they're not going to be committed. So I think a big part of this commitment is it's twofold. You're committed to your people in their efforts to be productive for the agency. So I want you to know that. So even when you build relationships, you're building relationships in an effort to be productive for the team that you supervise. There is an end game to that. You're not building relationships for the sake of relationships, even though that does happen. The problem is if you build relationships and that's your end game, then you could wind up getting walked all over on as a supervisor by the people that are going to manipulate those relationships. So there is another result to that. There's relationships to be productive. How can I build the team? Where do we want to head? And then again, it's the commitment and sacrifice. If you're sacrificing things as the front line, I have to also find myself possibly making those same sacrifices. And I cannot expect you to sacrifice if I'm not sacrificing. I can't expect you to be committed to whatever it is that we're headed, whatever vision it is that we're trying to carry out, if I myself am not committed. I want to mention something, guys. I've seen people that grew up or matured as a supervisor, maybe as a frontline professional. They just questioned a lot, maybe really didn't understand the bigger picture. And then when they moved into the next level, they got exposed to a little more, they grew, and then they wind up maturing, and then they wind up understanding what it is that we're trying to accomplish here. So what happens here now is they're ready to lead people to where they need to go because they have a level of commitment to where that end result is. But if you're a supervisor and you yourself don't believe in where you're headed, then there's no way you can lead your people to where they got to go. And there's no way that you can even put value behind the sacrifices that have to be made to get there. Because if you're minimizing it all, if you don't believe in the mission or the vision or whatever it is that you're trying to carry out, you can't expect the people beneath you to make sacrifices or commitments, because again, they're going to look at you first and they're going to question what you're doing. And if you're not up to par, you can't expect them to be up to par. So Joe, as a lieutenant, how good is it to reflect commitments and sacrifices that are needed to make sure that you are productive, that you are meeting the needs of the agency's vision or mission?
Commitment and presence is everything. I mean, first and foremost, if you're not prepared to sacrifice time, if you're not prepared to sacrifice energy and commitment to your staff, then stepping up is not for you. Every time you step up, frontline supervision included, sergeant, from CO to sergeant, lieutenant, every time you step up, you're going to lose a little bit more and you're going to have to sacrifice a little bit more, and your commitment grows because as you step up through the ranks, the number of employees that you oversee grows. So, if you're one of those supervisors that comes to work and portrays this, I guess for lack of better terms, if you're one of these whiny lieutenants or sergeants that come to work all the time and your attitude is fuck this, they don't pay enough for this, they don't pay me enough to do this shit. It's one of those attitudes that if you do it enough, it starts to rub off on those underneath you, and they start to emulate that attitude too. So if you're one of those type of supervisors, then, I suggest maybe you take a second look at yourself and think about demoting and let somebody step up into the position that's willing to commit and present that command attitude. That's, even on your worst days, man, you got to go in there and sell it. It may not be something that you like. It may not be something that your COs will like, but you still got to go in there and sell it. You got to find the positive in it somewhere. And if you can't do that, man, all you're going to do is give yourself an ulcer.
I like what you're saying too, because when it comes to commitment, You have to kind of balance the commitment between the agency and the people. And guys, I want to say something, and hopefully you guys take it the right way. The commitment should be filtered from the agency to the people, because in an effort to be productive, it has to go from the agency standards. So you're going to build relationships in an effort to be productive. But remember, the commitment needs to go from the agency to the people. That's the key. Like, what does the agency expect from me? Because I'm going to have to lead people to what the agency is expecting me to do. Remember, I work for them. So now when the agency's saying I got to do these things, I have to believe in that. And then I got to find a way to translate that belief to the people that I supervise. And by the way, if there's a vision we're trying to meet and I'm committed, and let's say I go to, translate this mission down to my front line and, they got needs, that's great. I could voice that up, because think about it, guys. We all have the same end game in mind. We're trying to reach something together that is being passed down. And that motivates me more to say, hey, you guys want us to get here. I need to take care of my people. I need to take care of my troops. These are the things they need. So that commitment also reinforces your ability to want to communicate those needs. Like, if I'm committed to what needs to be done, I am going to definitely be communicating whatever it is that I have to do, up, down, up, whatever it is, to get that mission accomplished. So I think commitment gives you the motivation to speak up when nobody else will. So again, if you're a leader, commitment matters, because I think commitment affects everything you do all around you. It affects your relationship with your people. It affects the productivity. It reflects what the agency expects of you. So again, and by the way, guys, I also think when you're committed and when you make sacrifices, it's a lot easier if it's aligned with a purpose that you have. Whatever that purpose is, you got to have a purpose, because that's what's going to help you get through the tough times. So again, if there are concerns and I'm committed and I have a purpose or why, that's going to help me go ahead and do whatever I can to meet whatever those expectations are. But if you don't believe in what you're doing, I find it to be very hard for you to then be committed to the outcome, or just be committed to help people reach the outcome. So again, let the commitment be the fuel. The fuel. That's what it is. The commitment's the fuel. And the sacrifices that are made through that commitment definitely have to be defined by some higher level purpose, because the sacrifices that you make, I mean, for me, growth was a big thing. So I was willing always to sacrifice in order to grow and be better. And my family knew that, and they allowed that, because they knew that if I was stuck in a position and I didn't grow, I would be miserable, and eventually that would trickle into the home life. So there was a balance there, and that made the sacrifices worth it, and kind of everybody understood the value. So it's like, Gangi, why'd you sacrifice this to move up? Because guys, if I didn't, I would just be miserable. So again, I'm constantly looking to move up and grow. And Joe, real quick though, would you agree that the commitment does help motivate you to kind of, speak for your people, try to get them connected to that vision, and then if they need something, let me go speak to the people in charge to help them?
Yeah, you got to have communication in a two-way street, because, if your people have needs, you got to be able to communicate that without fear. If you're scared to communicate your needs or your people's needs, how are they going to know you need to help if you don't ask? At the same token of that, when the administration or the executive level, communicates something down, it may not be the most positive thing in the world. It may not be the thing they want to hear for the day, but you got to have that commitment to be able to communicate that to your people in a way that you can still keep morale up, because I'm telling you, if you're an effective leader, morale on your shift, especially, or, any job, the morale of the workplace, the morale of the culture, man, means everything. That's what determines what, makes a good place a good place, or a good place a great place.
Yeah, and I actually think commitment is reciprocal too. If you're committed to your people, they'll be committed to you. If you're committed to the agency will be committed to you. So and again, that's showcased through behavior. So again, it's such a, it's a reciprocal relation. Even trust is really relationship driven. Team building is not a daily activity, team building is not an activity. It's a culture. Yeah, I said that right. Actually, it's not a daily activity. It's a culture. It's something that you must do every day. This is an effort to do that. So commitment actually, what are you committed to? I'm committed to building my team. I'm committed to help my team become successful. I mean, it's a great purpose to be able to grow your team, but in the effort, grow yourself. And that brings us to number 4. Can you lead yourself? Level of discipline. Guys, we kind of touched on this before with the abilities to lead, but I want to mention something, man. Leading yourself is probably the first thing that you're going to have to do before you decide to lead anybody else. Whatever you expect of your people, you yourself have to be able to meet those expectations. Again, kind of going back into, it's beyond the talk. It's are you willing to walk it? Because in order for people to see you as credible, they need to see that you've done it. And guys, I will say one thing: as you move up and your areas of responsibilities increase, you may cross into areas that you really don't have experience in. You can always substitute that with care until people can understand what you're about, because sometimes as you move up, you are going to get bigger areas of responsibility you've never done. But when you're crossing into those immediate supervisory positions where you're supervising people directly that are doing the job that you once did, credibility is established by your ability to basically, lead yourself. You've done it, you got experience. I respect that. Your reputation's good. I'm willing to follow you because, again, your reputation comes with you. It's if you were a crappy officer and never stepped up, never volunteered, then you become a supervisor and you're going to go ahead and expect your people to do that for you. I mean, they may do it because you've ordered them, but that's going to run thin. And then you're going to wind up having to be a positional leader because your reputation was crap. You're a supervisor who is now being seen as a hypocrite because you're pushing people past things that you never did. Like if you plan on making this a career and you plan on, being a supervisor, maybe going as far as you can, discipline matters, because what I'm going to tell you right now is you have to step up every day because you're going to need your people to step up when you're a supervisor. So when you take those highest positions and you try to push down and try to get your people to step up, trust and believe they're going to look and remember. I remember you, Gand. You're telling us to do things, but remember that time when we were hanging out as often? You never did these things. And they're going to bring it in your face. And it's like, well, you're a hypocrite. But then you get some people who always stepped up. And when they move up and they give out an order, they're respected because at the end of the day, you can't challenge that. I knew I knew you've done it, so I'm going to step up and do it. What's your thoughts on that, Joe? That can you lead yourself in that level of discipline?
Yeah, you can't step into a position and be one of those do as I say, don't do as I do leaders. It just like you said, if you're one of those employees that were weak natured and did just the minimal to get by and never did, you can't step into a position and expect to enforce them to do the things that you weren't willing to do. Yeah. You can't lead a shift that way because you're telling somebody to do something that you wouldn't do yourself, and they know for a fact that you wouldn't do it because they observed it while you're still subordinate before you decide to step up, and you're right, they remember that. Dude, how the hell are you going to tell me to go tell somebody to put shirts on in a day room when your scary ass sat on a step all night long and let them do what they want? But get the out of here. You can't, you have to discipline yourself long before you're even thinking about stepping up, because, you got to think about the big things or, the small things that lead into the big things. When I step up, are these people going to follow me? Are they going to do what I say? Do I have their respect? Have I disrespected them in a way that they wouldn't trust me? There's so many things that you should be self-disciplined prior to stepping up for, that, you don't just step in there and turn into, you're going to do as I say, not do as I do, or do as I did. It never works out, because you lose the morale of the ship, you lose the trust of the ship right off the bat, and it takes forever to get that to build back up.
Well, what's great about what you're saying, Joe, and I agree, guys. It takes forever to build good morale or good trust, but you mess it up, it goes by a lot. You lose it a lot quicker. But Joe mentioned something earlier that may play out in here too. It kind of actually all kind of fall into trust and credibility, but you want to model the way. So when I become your immediate supervisor, I'm assuming my first step as a supervisor role should be some level of supervising people that are doing the job that I used to do, because it's going to give me a chance to first, understand what it's like to remove myself from the actual job for a second, because that's hard for people that are experts in what they do to now step away and watch somebody else do it and not try to micromanage them. But that's the job. You have to let them do the job. You have to empower them, and you yourself, you play your role as their supervisor or as their leader. Again, it's people that you want to empower. But having said that, modeling is important, because I think as a supervisor, especially in a world where people are so quick to want answers or tips, I think that's when we could step up and show them the way. Show them the way is the journey part of it all. It's an investment. It's the why of it all. Let me not just show you how I do it. Let me show you why I do it. Because the why brings the connection. But I think in the times that we live in today, where people just want answers, good supervisors can find a way to connect to those individuals by showing them the way, taking time and walking next to them and creating an impact, as opposed to being far away and looking to impress. I'm going to be next to you and I'm going to show you the way, and I'm going to be impactful with this. I'm going to show you exactly, what needs to be done, but an effort that empowers you. Again, I mean, the rule of thumb, guys, in great leadership is first you do it, then you train somebody else, then you watch them do it, and then they do it by themselves, and then eventually they train somebody else. It's 5 steps, I believe. But having said that, showing someone the way truly does matter, because that's part of the journey, but that's also part of the connection. I still remember that people that showed me the why behind the how, I remember everything they've ever taught me. I do. It's just because I felt there was a connection there that was impactful, full of emotion, because it usually is emotion when someone takes the time to share something with you. It's an emotional moment, especially when you don't know it. You could be vulnerable, and now someone comes in and fills in the pieces. You'll never forget it, because I know when there were times when I was lost in this profession and I felt vulnerable, I remember those emotions, and those emotions related to my memory to the point where I'll never forget it. But then the person that comes in and helps me, it heightens that moment. It heightens the emotion. So you remember that when someone takes the time out of the day to fill in the gaps of knowledge that you need to be successful. I think that truly matters. And again, it all deals with connecting yourself to the right people. I was, I'm going to share something real quick. I don't know if it's a little off topic, but me and Joe were having a discussion before, and I remember this kind of goes building with kind of knowing who you are. I guess it does kind of relate to it. But when I got into this profession, there were extreme behaviors when it came to how some of the officers dealt with the inmates, to some extent, maybe completely disrespectful. And for a while I was lost, because I couldn't be that person. Like, I couldn't every day call somebody these words for no reason. It just wasn't me. And when you have such an extreme culture, professional officers are sometimes seen as inmate lovers, because you're not ultra aggressive. So at this point here, you're being professional, you're considered an inmate lover. And it's like, nah, you know what, man? This is where you have to fight to find who you need to be, because you don't want to be that, and you have to connect yourself to the right people. And this is where it becomes intentional, because passively, it would have been easier to connect to that, believe it or not, because it would be easier, because that's what the peers were doing it. But I didn't. I was intentional, and I found the people who weren't that way. And I created my reputation by being intentional with it and protecting it. And then, by the way, guys, you make a lot of big decisions probably at the beginning of your career. But once you make those big decisions at the beginning of your career, all you got to do after that is maintain it with the little decisions you got to make. If that makes any sense. I believe that does. I believe at the very beginning of my career, because things are new, I'm making some very big decisions on how I want my path to be, how I want to be a leader in this profession. But once I start committing myself to something, and I know this is where I need to be, and I'm connecting myself to the right people, there's smaller decisions I have to make along the way, yes, but they're all connected to those bigger decisions. So what am I doing now is I'm maintaining the path that I want to be on. And once I know where I want to be, those decisions become much easier to make. So remember that, because that matters. Because if you are not intentional and you're passive, you're going to find yourself going down the wrong path because for some reason, I know this may sound crazy, but for some reason, it's easier to do the wrong thing than it is to do the right thing. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. It's true. You have to always be intentional when it comes to your growth and when it comes to, you doing what's correct and remaining professional, even in the roughest of times. I remember one last thing before we go to the next one is I had a disagreement with somebody and we were going back and forth. And I know, or I believe, that I was correct. And I let this person voice their concerns, saying things that I did not do. And I could have spent like 10 to 15 minutes defending what I didn't do, or let this person vent, because at the end, maybe that's how they saw it. And then I asked myself, what is it that I want to accomplish here? What is it that I want to accomplish here? Do I want to spend all this time defending this perspective and make this a win-loss? Or do I want to just kind of find a way we could work together? Because I don't have enough energy anymore, guys. I got over 20 years in, and I have to be very careful of where I place my energy. And at the end of the day, whatever this person's perspective is, we're never going to be friends. It just is what it is, but we have to be professional. So at the end of the day, I'm not saying to swallow my pride, but I'm saying pick and choose my battles. It's not going to be a win-loss. Okay, are you done? I'm done. Let's do the reset. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have your perspective. I don't have enough energy to try to change that. And at the end of the day, I'm sure I'm going to have my perspective. But what do we want to accomplish here? I want to accomplish the fact that I want to move forward because we have a job to do. And again, that's great for a leader to step up and realize that when you go through conflict, hopefully conflict could be healthy. It could be. If we're not personally attacking anyone, it could be healthy to have conflict. But sometimes you get people that personally attack. You have to remember something, guys. At the end of the day, what is the outcome that you want? Never let your need to win sacrifice what needs to be done to build the team or move forward to that vision. And that's the hardest. That's hard, but well worth it if you can do that. Hey, Joe, before we get to the next one, you have anything? Because I covered a lot there. I kind of rambled, but I thought there were some good nuggets in there. What's your thoughts about I would love to get your thoughts, Joe, on making the bigger decisions at the beginning and where the little decision, even though they may look like little, but the little decisions to maintain it along the way.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about that phone call, man, and I love it. I love it when you call because those you're so passionate about them little things. In our profession, man, it's awesome. When you make the big decisions, because you're trying to establish a foundation of knowledge, wealth, empowerment, morale, commitment, and like you said early on, you can't lead your people if you have no trust in them. You can't lead your people if you don't give them the knowledge, if you don't give them the why for the how. A lot of times when you find yourself in a stagnant position as a leader, the question is, why is it stagnant? And that's when you find out that, your people crave that knowledge, crave that, not so much power, but you give them that added responsibility, for knowing the why as to the how you just gave the order for. Things will come full circle. All people want is to be, when all employees want to be included. They want to feel included. They want to feel like they're a part of the team. And when you're transparent, when you're an effective leader, and when you're willing to share your knowledge and power and not be stingy with it and bogart it for all yourself because you're scared someone's going to take your job, you wind up with a shift that knows what you want, when you want, how you want. And 9 times out of 10, you don't even have to issue the commands anymore. They know what you need. They know what you want. And as long as you give them the commitment of the wealth and the knowledge to empower them and to make them a part of the team, you should only have to issue that once. They should be able to do that automatically for you from there on in, just because they want to, not because they have to.
Mm. And Joe, I love what you said, because if you are a positional leader, people will follow you because they have to, and that doesn't last long. But when you cross into the permissional lead, where the people have given you permission, the people follow you because they want to. They follow you because they want to. So you go from a have to a want. And then you go also, believe it or not, positional is me. Well, now with relationships, it's we. So look at that beautiful shift from have to want, from me to we. And that kind of actually, it's a good transition to the last part. As a leader, are you willing to serve those who follow you? The funny thing is for a long time, people thought that the people you supervise are the ones that serve the leaders, and for a while, that's what was done. It was positional by nature. You work for me, and then eventually there became a transition where it's like, to be honest with you guys, if you want to be truly productive, the supervisors work for their people. It's true. It's what great models of success are, because you need good employee morale. It's really the intangibles, the commitment, the morale, the temperature of the environment, the culture. If you want to create a culture that's productive, then that requires the higher levels to show value to the people that they supervise, to get them invested, if you will, to be actively listening, but also, you got needs, let me help you. That's the key. I think great supervisors, or great leaders come in and say, how can I add value to your life, as John Maxwell would say, or what can I do for you? And in some places, leaders don't do that because they feel that, well, they serve me. Or I'm sorry, some supervisors don't do that because they feel that the front line serves them. Guys, it's not. It's, you should go down in your efforts to empower your employees when you walk, to ask them, hey, what can I do for you? Servant leadership, I think, to be honest with you, is evergreen. I think that's something that truly matters, because you want people to want to work for you. You do. You want people to want to look forward to waking up on their Monday and being happy to come to work, because at the end, they feel they have value, they feel they have purpose, and they feel invested. And there's no way they're going to feel value or any of those things if we don't do what we can for them to make them feel that way. So I think that's a big part of the servant leadership, is to spend your time as a leader telling your people that they matter. Would you agree with that, Joe?
Absolutely. You figure 20, 25 years ago, we weren't doing this for the money. We were doing this because we were having fun. We were doing this because, that we had great leadership back then. And, we had the type of supervisors that weren't power hungry. They didn't mind sharing their knowledge and wisdom to make you feel part of the team. They never went out of their way to isolate anybody. And that's something that's always stuck with me, especially when I started promoting. And, the thing about it is, you never isolate anybody, because we walk in the gate as a team, and, at the end of the day, we're going to go home as a team, and that's something you always want to practice and keep steady, because, I used to teach in the supervisors academies too, that, without them, there is no us. So, the first, my opening line would be, a lot of the times would be, we need them a hell of a lot more than they need us, because as a lieutenant, I could drop dead right now. And guess what? The shift is going to keep right on running, because they know what needs to be done, but without them, we can't function. So, you got to learn to invest in your staff. You got to learn to help your staff out when you can, even if you do have to write an employee up. If they're a good employee, whoever the reprimanding authority is, I would make it my personal mission to go to them with the employee present and say, hey, look, Officer Gangi is a solid officer, never calls in. He's here every day, sometimes early. He's always willing to help out. He's always willing to go that extra mile. He made a mistake. So let's not damage his credibility, and let's not damage his morale. I'd be willing to put myself on the line for those employees, because it's the right thing to do. You know, everybody's going to make mistakes. We're all human. But how you recover from those mistakes and how you help your employees recover from those mistakes. And I'm telling you, I still have employees now that will poke fun and joke at me. I had a sergeant that worked for me 20 years ago. He got caught with a bunch of chicken from the fried chicken from the inmate dining hall. He decided he was going to go back and eat it himself, and of course he had to go to disciplinary because they ran out of chicken in the chow hall. But we joked about it later because from that point on, I called him Sergeant Chicken Man. And, I went to the ward myself. I said, look, boss, granted it was a stupid thing for him to do, but I'm telling you, he runs my night shift at the trustee camp. I can always depend on him being there. He's a damn good sergeant. He always backs his bosses. I said, so, let's not hit him across his head. And the warden told the sergeant that. She said, if it hadn't been for your lieutenant right there, you was going to be eating your next piece of chicken as an officer because I was going to bust you all the way down. And we still joke about it to this day. You got to be willing to put yourself out. You got to be willing to put yourself out there for your people. If you expect your people to put themselves out there for you, you got to be willing to do that in return.
Yeah. And I like what you're saying, Joe, because even when it comes to being a servant leader, it's helping your people grow, and you're not spending time, you're investing time, and that takes more time, to stay connected to somebody, help them grow, cultivate them, and then, let them be better than you. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what you want, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
especially me, as I push past 20 years, I got 5 more years left, and that's, coming pretty quick. Not that I want to rush time, but now it's more about what have I left behind. And the funny thing is, it has nothing to do with position. It's more my impact on other people. I remember when I got promoted recently to the next position I'm in now, I had to go now from one facility to another. And that one facility I was at for probably almost 7 years. Now, by the way, you develop connections as you move up in your career, or even as you're in your career, obviously. So as officers, I had a lot of good people, worked in one facility for 8 years. Then when I became a sergeant, it was hard leaving some of them behind. But it's a sacrifice that you have to make in order to continue growing. And you realize that people that you think are going to be in your whole book of life, they're not. They're chapters. They're chapters. They're not meant to be in the whole book. They're meant to have an influence, an intense influence in those moments. Because again, when you're living your life, you want to you want to make sure every moment is quality. It's not about quantity, it's quality. And you're going to have people that are going to have an impact on you that you may feel they'll be around forever. And, you get to the next facility. So when I made sergeant, I moved to another facility, and, you build new relationships and you try to hold on to some of the old ones. But, to be honest with you, when you're really connected to people through work, and you may have that great relationship at work, it truly does become intentional to maintain those relationships when you go to another facility. Because again, if me and Joe work together constantly, I know I'm going to see Joe every day. So me and Joe got this great relationship, but the work, it really helps us keep that relationship going. Now I go to another facility, me and Joe don't see each other as much. Now it's intentional to stay connected to Joe. And that's where you tend to lose a lot of the people that you may have been connected to on the job, because it's more intentional now. It's like I'm not in the environment no more. So now I got to reach out to this person, and, there's a lot more effort. And the problem is also the effort is probably going to have to go into your own personal time. So now if you have a family or something like that, it's hard to stay connected, but you make the effort. If it's worth it, of course you make the effort. But I just want people to know it does become harder when you go to another facility. And then when I moved up into the superintendent position, to the admin position, it was unique because even though we had our bonds as an officer, and then I had my bond, with my officers when I was at my second facility as a sergeant, when I was in administration, it's unique because there's less of us, but we're handling a whole facility, and there's a lot of stress. I know people may not think so, but there is a lot of stress in middle management. Middle management is a very tough position to have. You won't know until you're there. You can only assume. But for most organizations, middle management is tough because you're in the middle, the needs and the wants, so just by that, they're sandwiched. And there's a lot of pressure when it comes to maintaining the running of that facility. And you develop really close connections to the people that are doing it with you side by side. Now, don't get me wrong. I loved working with my officers. Even when I was their supervisor, but the connection I developed on the administration side was a very intense connection because, again, the stress of the position, but also just the amount of work and our reliance on each other. And when I left that facility after 7 years, it was devastating. It was one of the biggest sacrifices I had to make because at one point I was willing to stop growing, to remain at that facility, to be connected to the people that I work with. But having said that, they wouldn't allow that anyway, because as much as they didn't want me to leave, they were still telling me to go for those promotions. And the impact was relevant. And I believe this is related to the leadership discussion, was the impact was relevant on that day when I left. There were just, everybody had a quality moment. I mean, it wasn't just a bunch of people coming to say goodbye. It was individualized, where they didn't just say goodbye, but what you meant to them. And I remember the last moment when I'm getting ready to back out for the last time, and a person caught me in my car, and they caught me at the perfect time because I had held so much in. So I was waiting to crack. And then the person comes in, and it was the one person I was connected to the most. And they said something, and it was just so much emotion behind it. But it was a beautiful thing. Sorry, hold on. My mic fell. It was a beautiful thing because it was, but it was a tremendous sacrifice in my effort to take the next step. I'm trying to develop that now, but it kind of all seems superficial compared to what that was. But that doesn't mean I don't strive for that. Now, mind you, guys, I want to mention something here too. When you develop leadership, as we talked about 5 levels, once you reach a certain level, don't forget, you don't forget the levels behind it. It's an effort to help grow, so it always stays connected. But you wind up restarting sometimes, or you wind up, being at a different level with different people. So when you make, so let's say I'm at this prior facility and I got the relationship with the people going, and I'm productive and everything's going great. And then I get transferred over to this new facility. I got to start back at level 1 all over again. I got to start from my position. I got to develop my relationships, and I got to find a way to be productive. And it's a cycle. It really is a cycle. And the tiring part of it all is, and it's worthy, but it takes the most effort, is the relationship building. Because even when you're productive, you still have to go back and balance the relationships. So even when you get to that level, you still have to go back down and make sure you're balancing that level of relationships. But again, every time you move, or every time you gain a position, or in my case, I worked at 4 different facilities. So every time I went from one facility to another, to another, to another, I had to start all over again. It didn't matter what position I was in. I went in at the the second to highest level of the facility that you could be at right now. I'm at the second highest level, but I didn't start off, automatically being respected and having relationships. No, I had to go right back to step 1 again and earn it all. So you really don't see the fruits of that labor until another sacrifice is made. And then when you go to move forward, the routine that people thought would last forever finally starts to have a little bit of a timeline. We're getting to the end of that chapter. It's like, well, I thought it was the whole book. It wasn't the whole book. It was just a chapter. And then when all of a sudden you start getting close to the end of the chapter, you start seeing your impact. You start seeing your legacy. You start seeing the things that you didn't realize were rather routine that had so much power. Someone coming up to you saying, Gans, I'm going to miss you in the hall, waving to me every day. It's like, wow, I didn't think it meant that much. It did, because maybe nobody else waved to that person. So having said that, we're committed to a lot of leadership actions every day that we don't realize. And then when we finally get to that deadline and we're getting ready to make another sacrifice, all of a sudden, all these things come out. And I think in the long run here is that, You never know how rich of a moment you're in until it's gone. And then you wind up looking back saying, man, I didn't realize how good it was. So I think one thing as a leader right now, if I can make another suggestion, is take advantage of the moment you're in now. Don't get so overwhelmed with work that people become secondary. Find a way to literally stay connected to your people, because in the end, when you make those sacrifices, or when you finally done with this profession, you go to leave, you want to leave something behind, you don't look at your position. You look at the lives you touched. And again, as best you can, and this is why people hear that if they watch it, they'll understand what I'm saying. It does take intentionality now to stay connected to the people that I've left from the former facility. And I get that, because we don't have the luxury anymore of seeing each other. And sometimes the intentionality, again, we have our own lives, and it's tough because after 4, we're on our own thing. But just know for a fact that that doesn't minimize the importance of it all, the moments that we shared, and hopefully one day we can continue to do that. It's just sometimes life gets in the way. And again, if you're not intentional with finding your way to push life aside and say, hey, I gotta contact them. I haven't talked to them for a while. Because I'm going to tell you something. A year goes by, 2 years go by, and next thing you know, you just become a face in the hall. So I don't know. I think that matters too, because the reason why I said that is a big part of leadership is building your relationships with people. And I just wanted people knowing that, the relationships, yes, they have to be productive, but in the process, they build a deeper meaning, because through those relationships, a leader finds their value. Remember that. Through the relationships with the people that they've met and they build across time. And by the way, guys, those relationships that you build as a leader is usually a balance between care and candor. Care will develop a relationship, but candor will direct it, as John Maxwell would say. Hey, there was a lot there, Joe, but let me ask you that question before we start to close off. Building relationships with people when you finally retired and you think these moments are going to last forever, it truly does become intentional at that point to stay connected. And I think a lot of people may think that, you don't want to make the effort anymore. Sometimes it's not about the effort. It's just, it's about the fact that, you have other obligations sometimes. Not that you want to push your friends aside, but on the after hours, I got my family. And you want to make it work, but you always got to find a way. Now at this point here, if I could give advice, this point here is that now the people that you want to stay connected to, it could be stronger, because now when you make the intentionality of doing it, this is no longer the work pushing it. This is you now doing things on your own time to keep the fire going in that relationship, whatever it was that, whatever type of relationship it was. Would you agree with that, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest time that you make the most positive impact on somebody is when they're at their lowest. When you find somebody that's down, got stuff going on, you invest in them, you care about them, and you leave that positive impact on them. That positive impact lasts a lifetime. I have officers from 25 years ago who are contacting me now that, hey, Lou, I got a question for you, man. I've always trusted you. I've always respected you. And I know you're not going to steer me wrong. Those type moments feel good too, especially after you've been retired and people are still calling you. My wife works at my former unit as an officer, and they're always jamming her up. Hey, tell Lou, man, I need to talk to him. I got a question for him. And she's at the point where she's just handing my phone number out to him. Here, ask him your damn self. When you get them calls from them people that, you helped them along the way, especially when they were having a rough patch and they were down on their luck, and you gave them that little nudge to help them get forward, and it left that everlasting print on them. When you get calls from those people, even after you're retired, that says that you've done something. You've left a positive impact, and if that's my only legacy, I'm perfectly okay with that. At least I know that I never intentionally put somebody in harm's way. I invested my time in each one of my employees, and I gave them the help when they needed it, and I gave them a foot to the ass when they needed it too. But that's what makes leaders leaders, because you got to be firm, fair, and consistent. You got to care about them. If you don't care and you don't even project or even attempt to show that you care, the rest of it means absolutely nothing. So you got to take that time to invest in them, and let them know that you're there for them, not just because of the job, but if something happens and you need something and I can help, I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
That's just how I am. It's who I am, and that's the way the leader should be. And if you're a leader, you're going to know you're going to sacrifice your time. You might have had all the time in the world to do what you want as an officer, but when you start promoting up, yeah, you're going to sacrifice some of your free time, and you have to. You have to, in order to properly invest in your people. Don't be the one to have that conversation walking quickly to your car, and you just jump in your car and you leave in the middle of that conversation. Take the time to listen to your people. A lot of the times all they want to do is vent, and they need somebody they can trust to vent that to, and know that you're going to give them solid advice. The impact that you leave on your people today will be your legacy tomorrow.
And people are worth the effort.
And people are worth the effort. Absolutely, they're worth the effort.
It truly is. The relationship building is the most rewarding, but it could sometimes be the biggest sacrifice, because in the end, as you build relationships, your connection to the people, and then when you go to grow, when you go to move up, you can go to a whole nother location, and now that connection you have to the people can make it harder for you to want to go. But again, they're going to support you. They're going to want you to go. And then it really does have to become an effort to stay connected, because now the job itself can't help you stay connected anymore. So again, I mean, it is good at one point to try to balance the relationships as well. But in the end, guys, people are worth it. Develop those relationships, because we all need the support moving forward, but develop the relationships, make that a priority. But remember, keep it balanced, because as I said, that the relationships are important, but in the end, you have to have a purpose behind those relationships, because you could have people that are going to manipulate those relationships for selfish means. And now the problem is they're going to wind up bringing the whole team down. And then in your effort to save the one relationship with, let's say, Joe, I just burned the relationship with the other 10. Remember that. Joe's coming about him. And at the end of the day, with Joe's selfish needs now, unfortunately, has made me appear less than favorable to my peers. Hey, Joe, you have anything you'd like to say in closing? Or the people I supervise, not my peers, the people I supervise. Joe, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, officers, you're the frontline officers, take the time to communicate with your leaders. We don't have magic wands. We don't have crystal balls. If something's on your mind, tell them, because we can't fix what we don't know. Take the time to stick that olive branch out, and trust your leader. And a lot of times, standoffs come from lack of communication. And that's from both ends, both from the front line and from the supervision. So, don't get yourself stuck in that position. Reach out, talk to your leader, trust them, give them the respect enough to at least try to let them either teach you or help you fix the problem. Leaders, take the time to invest in your folks. They're your most valuable asset, because, without them, there is no you. They can do the job without you, but you can't do the job without them. So treat them accordingly. Invest in them. Take the time, make the sacrifices, be balanced in the way you do it. Everybody knows the further you step up, the more you sacrifice. And being a lieutenant, I can tell you I sacrificed a lot. But in the end run, it was worth it, because I'm telling you, when you still hear from people from 20 years ago that you made that impression on, I could give a damn about getting attaboys and that kind of crap, for me being a lieutenant. What means more to me is when them people reach out to you after 20 years and say, you know what, you were one of the best supervisors I ever had. You took the time, you knew me, you helped me when I was down. That means more to me than any rank in the penitentiary system. Take the time to invest in them. You got to be emotionally invested. You got to take the time to sacrifice yourself, for the greater good. And, if you make the effort and take that time with your people, I'm telling you, the paybacks are awesome. You can't have a better feeling. But you got to stay safe, keep fighting the fight. And I appreciate everything that you guys do every day.
Yeah, I'm texting Alicia. She commented. Remember, Alicia? We have to start getting back to our live shows.
Yeah, we do. Yes, we do.
So, guys, in short, she left a comment. I wanted to comment back. So, guys, I thought this was a great topic. I mean, know the limitations of yourself. I mean, that's the key, because when you go to lead others, if you're not self-aware, if you don't have self-responsibility, I think that's a term, self-awareness, self-responsibility. The problem is you can't expect people to follow you. I mean, you have to ask yourself, would you follow you? And I think in the end, knowing your limitations could make you a better leader, because it gives you something to strive for. These are my areas of weakness, and these are areas I can work on. And again, guys, when it comes to, there are certain areas of weakness we cannot control, and there are certain areas of weakness that we do have a way of controlling through good attitude and good effort. And those usually areas of intangibles, like people development, relationship development, working on yourself, commitment. Again, you want to lead by example. So if you're not stepping up, then you can't expect the people that you lead to do the same. And I truly believe that, again, it's a great book, 5 levels of leadership. It's pretty much the foundation for leadership. I don't think you need to be in a leadership position to read it either. I think it doesn't matter your position. You could be a leader right now, if you're even frontline. It doesn't matter. Leadership is really just about you. It's a personal and professional development about you. It helps you in so many areas. And even in the end, it's like, well, I'll read it when I go into a leadership position. Yeah, but then it's too late. Why? It's too late at that point. Just read it now. If you know that's a route you want to take, or if you want to step up your game and just be a leader, then grow now. Grow, continue to grow. Because I'll tell you something, once you read that first book and once you get that thirst for knowledge, it's a beautiful thing, and it makes the sacrifices you have to make worth it. Because in the end, when I move up, it's not defined by money. It's defined by the fact that I'm learning so much more. Now I just got to find how I can apply it. And a lot of it has come onto the venue here. I mean, all the sacrifices I made, I pretty much share it here. As always, guys, the show is here. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post up a video. Stay safe.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was a good.